Picture your street, an ordinary afternoon in July. Your neighbor steps out of her front door and starts to dance. There's no music, no festival, no wedding. She just dances through the afternoon. Past dark, her body gives out and she keeps going, and when she finally drops, it isn't because she decided to stop. 6 days later, there are more than 30 people dancing in that street. Within a month, as many as 400. This is not a legend. This is July 1518, Strasbourg, a real city with real records and a council that had to do something about it. And you already know how this story ends. They danced until they died. Except here's the question almost nobody asks. When the city called in its doctors, they didn't panic. They sat down and wrote a diagnosis. And then the city government hired carpenters, built a stage in the middle of the grain market, and paid musicians to play. Somebody looked at 400 people dancing themselves into the ground and decided the correct response was more dancing. Why would anyone do that? Let's open the file. Wait, hit subscribe and smash that like button before we continue. First, the version you've heard. A woman, usually called Frau Trophäa, steps into a Strasbourg street on the 14th of July and dances until she collapses. The madness spreads like a virus. Dozens, then hundreds. They dance for days without sleep, without food. 15 people a day drop dead, and the baffled authorities, having no idea what to do, throw up their hands and give the lunatics a stage and a band. That last detail is the most famous part of the whole story, the punchline of 1,000 internet posts. Medieval doctors were so useless that when people couldn't stop dancing, they prescribed more dancing. That version is where the story lives now. Every list of history's strangest events, 100 podcasts, a Florence and the Machine album, and it has a problem. Almost none of the most vivid parts of it come from 1518. Not the name, not the death count, not the helplessness. Strasbourg was a rich, self-governing city that wrote everything down. It had a chief clerk keeping official records, a chronicler noting things as they happened, a guild of physicians that issued formal rulings, a council that took minutes. Those papers survive. And when you read what they actually say, the doctors don't look baffled at all. They look like men following a theory, carefully, all the way to the end. And there was one more thing that city already had, sitting in everybody's head before any of this began. A story about what it means when a person cannot stop dancing. Here's what the record says. The city called in the Physicians' Guild, and the guild returned a verdict, not a shrug, a diagnosis. The affliction, they ruled, was a natural disease which comes from overheated blood. Read that again, because every word of it is a claim. Natural, not demonic, not witchcraft, not a curse. Disease, a thing with a cause. Overheated blood, a specific mechanism named. To understand why that's a serious answer, you have to know the medicine of the time. Every trained doctor in Europe believed the body ran on 4 fluids, and that health meant keeping them in balance. Blood was the hot one. Summer was hot. July 1518 was brutally hot. Too much heat in the blood was supposed to produce exactly what the doctors were looking at. Wild energy, no sleep, a body that would not stop moving. Inside that system, the diagnosis fits perfectly. And here is the detail that should stop you. The standard treatment for overheated blood was bloodletting. Open a vein, let the excess out. It was the most common medical procedure in Europe. The Strasbourg physicians did not prescribe it. They prescribed dancing. Because inside their theory, that was the better answer. You don't drain the heat, you burn it off. Move until the excess is spent, then rest and let the blood cool. And they weren't improvising. The record says they based it on how earlier sufferers of this same condition had been treated. There were precedents. To them, this was not an unknown horror. It was a known illness with a standard procedure. So the council behaved like a government running a public health plan. Carpenters and tanners were ordered to clear out guild halls and turn them into dance floors. Platforms went up in the horse market and the grain market. Musicians were hired: drums, fiddles, pipes, horns, and then the strangest line in the whole archive. Healthy dancers were put on the public payroll and sent in to dance alongside the sick to keep them moving. A city government paid professional dancers to help sick people dance. That is not panic. That is a treatment, funded, staffed, and rolled out across the city. And now, the question flips. If they were following a theory, what happened when the theory failed? They noticed the stages drew crowds. More dancers appeared. Whatever those platforms in the grain market were doing, they were not curing anyone, and the council could see it. So they reversed. The stages came down. Public dancing was banned. Music was banned across the city, with one narrow exception. Weddings and celebrations could still use stringed instruments. A council that had spent public money to make its city dance was now making it illegal to play a drum. That is the part the punchline version leaves out entirely. Strasbourg ran an intervention, watched the result, and cancelled it. Then they threw out the medicine entirely and tried religion. The worst cases were loaded into wagons for a 3-day journey to a shrine at Saint-Vern in the hills, a shrine to Saint Vitus. The saint people believed punished sinners by making them dance without stopping. There, priests laid them under a wooden carving of the saint. They were given crosses, blessed with holy water and holy oil, and put into red shoes that a priest had blessed, and the dancing stopped. By September, it was over. Now hold on to the shape of that because it's backwards. The medical treatment spread the disease. The religious one ended it. In a story about superstitious idiots, that is the wrong way round, and it is the clue. Now, about those 15 deaths a day. Go looking for them in 1518, and they are not there. The City Cross records don't have them. The contemporary chronicler doesn't have them. The council's own notes don't have them. There is no document from the year of the event that gives a death count at all, and historians still argue about whether the records show anyone dying from the dancing itself. The bodies enter the story later. A chronicle written at the end of the 16th century, 70 years after the fact. An astrological chronicle from 1636, 118 years after, describing people who danced until finally they fell down unconscious and succumbed to death. A 17th century jurist quoting a poem that no longer exists. Many hundreds in Strasbourg began to dance and hop, women and men. Every generation that retold it added weight, and the detail we are now most certain about, that they danced themselves to death, is the one with the thinnest paper behind it. Even the first dancer is unstable. Frau Trophia appears in 4 of the 6 chronicle accounts. 2 of them just say, a woman. So, why were they dancing? There is an answer. It is not nobody knows. The historian John Waller pieced it together from the state of the city, and it comes in 3 parts. First, Strasbourg in 1518 was falling apart. The harvests of 1516 and 1517 had both failed. Bread prices were vicious, the poor were half-starved, and on top of hunger came disease. Plague was back, and syphilis was new and terrifying. People in that city genuinely believed the world was ending. Second, a body under that much stress for that long can simply give out. Not faint, go somewhere else. Doctors today call it a dissociative trance. You're moving, but you are not steering, and you cannot stop by deciding to stop. It isn't acting. It happens in every culture after every kind of catastrophe. Third, and this is the part that matters, a mind coming apart needs somewhere to go. It needs a shape, and Strasbourg had a shape ready. Remember that story everybody in the city already knew. Saint Vitus punishes sinners by making them dance until they drop. That belief was sitting in every head in town before the first dancer took a single step. So the hunger supplied the pressure, and the scent supplied the choreography. Which brings us to the second question. Why did one woman become 400? Because the city announced that it was real. Think about what those stages in the gray market said to everyone walking past. Not, "We are treating a few sick people," they said, out loud, with public money. "St. Vitus's dance is happening here. It is genuine, and this is where you come when it takes you." If you were starving, frightened, and half convinced God was angry with you, the city had just told you exactly what was coming for you and where to go when it arrived. The council didn't fail to stop the outbreak. It advertised it. The prescription didn't dance anyone to death. It recruited them. And now that backwards thing makes sense. The stages said the affliction was live and ongoing. The shrine said the opposite. Sin confessed, saint satisfied, story finished. The council never knew why the second one worked. Reasoning about blood, they had blundered into the only lever that moved anything, the belief itself. Which leaves one last thing. Being careful inside the wrong idea didn't protect those doctors. It just made them build the stage faster. And we did the same thing to them. We inherited the story with holes and filled the holes with whatever it seemed to need. A madness needs bodies. A joke needs useless doctors. Same engine, both times. A belief you already hold decides what shape the evidence takes. For them, it was St. Vitus. For us, it's medieval people were idiots. A glitch in history isn't always missing data. Sometimes it's the opposite. Data that was never there, slipped in so smoothly that nobody remembers doing it. One more time, go back to that street. July 1518. Narrow cobblestones, half-timbered houses leaning over them, and one woman dancing in the afternoon heat, while her neighbors stand and watch. We still don't know what happened to her. Her name shows up in 4 chronicles out of 6. Whether she lived, nobody bothered to write down. The first dancer stays a mystery. But the epidemic doesn't. We know why a starving, terrified city produced people who could not stop moving. We know why it came out as dancing and not something else. And we know why one woman became 400. Because the city built her a stage, hired her a band, and put the whole thing on the public payroll. The doctors were not fools. They were careful men working from the wrong map, and their care is exactly what spread it. That's the file. Not a joke about medieval idiots, a story about how a cure becomes a carrier. History has glitches. We find them. File closed on Strasbourg. Next time we open a file on a fire that never happened. Everyone knows the Salem witches burned. 20 people were executed at Salem in 1692, and not one of them burned to death. So where did the flames come from, and who lit them? That's next on Glitch Files. File closed. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.